the volume.
Turn up the volume.
You've arrived at the destination for all things Kentucky. This is the Bleed Blue Network Podcast.
Big Blue Nation, welcome into another episode of the All UK Ball Podcast. Randow here. Selena is out with doing some family business, but we do have a special guest on here from the Barrel State Podcast. Brandon, how you doing today, man?
Good, man. Good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, and looking forward to talking some UK football today.
Yeah, man. I tell you what, it was a wild weekend of college football. I don't know if you saw the video I put out there, but it's like you almost have to expect some crazy upset to happen in the SEC every week. It's the parity in the league is pretty wild. I think it's arguably the top conference in college football, and I don't think it's even close. Like you can make an argument with Ohio State and some of those guys, but if you talk about all of the SEC and how competitive each team is, they're going to eat each other alive throughout the regular season. You just got to hope that there's a couple teams left come playoffs.
Yeah, and you outside of maybe Mississippi State, I mean anybody in this conference can beat anybody. Apparently, I mean after we just saw with the Vanderbilt game, I mean that's a once in a lifetime game. I mean we may never see Alabama lose at Vanderbilt again, so cherish that one because that one's definitely unique. But yeah, this is a deep conference. I think you're seeing kind of right now what happens when the conference just recruits at a different level, and you see not only Kentucky benefiting from that, but look at all these rosters. I mean, every single team is talented and deep, and if you don't come to play, any team can beat you in this league. And like you touched on with this weekend, I mean, this may be the greatest bye week in the history of UK football. I mean, you get Tennessee going down, you get Louisville going down. So I mean, it was quite a bye week for Kentucky this week.
Yeah, absolutely. It was disappointing waking up on Saturday not having Kentucky football, but then you saw everything that happened on Saturday. You're like, hey, this was a good weekend to have off because we were not caught up in all that nonsense. Just things that you didn't see Arkansas put up a fight like they did and winning. Just what was it? How many of the top 25 went down? Was it 6 or 7 went down? I
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had Miami getting bailed out by the refs again. So it could have been another one. But college football is absolutely crazy. But talking about Kentucky, went through it. I was listening to some of your podcast, and I think we're on the same page when it comes to this team and the way things have played out and the possibility now of a playoff. If we handle business at the end of the season, which I don't think we would have made that. I know we wouldn't have made that argument after SC, but going and holding Georgia to the 13 points and almost coming out with that win there, and then going to Ole Miss and getting a big win there. I think it's easily, if we go to Tennessee or go to Texas and win those games, we're talking about 10-2, 9-3 team who should be considered for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying I still think it's a tall mountain to climb because Kentucky's schedule is up there as one of the toughest schedules in the country. So definitely think Kentucky is behind the 8 ball when it comes to the playoffs. But I mean, if we're as good as we've seen this, with this team and this defense so far, I do think Kentucky has a shot to win every single game on their schedule going forward. So that gives me confidence. And what I really like about this team that a lot of people aren't talking about is the fact that our offense has gotten better every single game, and it's a linear improvement where South Carolina looked horrible, then they looked a lot better against Georgia, but not great. And then we come out and beat Ole Miss in a game where the offense was clicking for that. And the point spread didn't show it, but the offense was clicking in a way that we hadn't seen yet. So if this offense can continue to take a step every single week to get to a point where I don't think they're going to match the defense, because the defense may be a top 5 defense in the country, but if they could keep taking steps forward to be a really good offense, this is going to be a dangerous team by the end of the year.
No, I agree. The offense, and we expected, I think, with Brock coming in and Barryon and Dan Key coming back, and we still haven't seen Chip yet, but we weren't super deep. We didn't think we were deep at running back. It turns out we are. Like, we got Wilcox. Like, we have some talent there. Sumo and Wilcox have been holding it down, and then hopefully we see Chip in the Vandy game. I know the surgery is still kind of lingering over there, but it sounds like he's going to be he'll still be available and not have the season in surgery. So we'll see if he suits up. But getting away from that, we expected it to be an explosive offense from the jump. And what we talked about this, Selena and I talked about this in our last episode, was the defense is great because they've had the continuity. Coach White is back. A lot of those, the defensive players that were there last year who showed promise are back. And then you have anchors like Pop who come in there and who transfer, who had a lot of football experience. New offensive coordinator. You got Brock, who is a 5-star talent, but hasn't really had a lot of snaps as a starting quarterback. Jamari has come in and still hasn't been able to take off like we expected. So there were some new pieces of the offense. So now that they'll have some game reps and some of that in-season continuity will be built, I agree. I think we'll start seeing the offense open up. And if they can, what's the average? If we would average 21 points a game, we would be undefeated at this point. I would think, right? The 31,
except for South Carolina.
But even that one, 31 points, that included a pick 6. So that wasn't even a lot of those.
That's true.
A lot of the points weren't given up by the defense. So if take away some of those boneheaded plays, and at that one, he's forcing down the field. Brock just trying to make a play, but you take away some of those things. We're in every single game at least, and I don't think we're going to ever be a Ole Miss, Tennessee type offense where, you have the ability to go off for 35, 40 points a game. I think we're going to be a team that uses the running game, use the jab, and then come out of nowhere with the right hook, right? And get a shot play downfield, start using the play action, roll Brock out, use his legs, those sort of things where if we can get 2-3 explosive plays a game, and something like, win the turnover battle, or even if it's just winning the time of possession battle, now we're talking about we're going to be in every single game and have a chance to win against anybody we play.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it with the weapons on this offense. We've got so many so many weapons on this offense that we haven't even started to utilize yet. So that gives me a lot of confidence too, because I kind of touched on this on my own podcast, but you look at Barry and Brown. He was going into the season going to be a huge part of our offense, and he did make the big catch in the Ole Miss game, but he really hasn't been involved with the offense a lot so far this season. That's a huge weapon that we haven't utilized. You got Chip Trainum, like you mentioned. Don't know where he's going to fit into this role coming back, if he does come back. But if he does, that's RB1. He was planning to be our first back going into the season, that he hasn't even been into the rotation yet. And I really like where the running back room is without him. So you bring in potentially our best running back into a rotation that's already doing great. That gives me a lot of confidence. Really haven't used the tight ends much at all. I think a couple catches in the Georgia game that I saw, that I don't really remember them making too many plays in the Ole Miss game, but we've heard about this consistently over the years, that Kentucky is going to get involved with the tight ends. They're going to get the tight ends more involved in the offense. We haven't seen it, but I think we got some great tight ends. So if we can find a way to get them involved with the offense, I just really like how many weapons we have, and it gives me confidence that if we can just find a way to utilize them, and if Brock can get more confidence, I just like where we're headed, and I like that we're not peaking. We're winning games without actually having to utilize all those weapons, and that just shows me that if we can keep taking steps to get better. Look at where Tennessee's at right now. They're downgrading Kentucky. If we can continue to improve, we're only going to get better and better each week.
Yeah, I liked your analogy or your look at the offense there of how it's a linear progression and not peaking now is good. Let's get to the point. Let's get to the summit. As we get into the end of the season, as we're playing Texas, as we're going into playing Louisville, those sort of things. Because as we get further away from the SC loss and get close to the playoff, like the committee's it's gonna like, what have you done for me lately? So let's win those big games or be at least competitive in those big games to be like, hey, this Kentucky team deserve a spot there. And you're right, it's a tall task. You got to go to Tennessee, go to Austin. That environment's going to be electric. You've seen, I think these upsets have been these SEC crowds are absolutely insane. I mean, you just sellouts and people are losing their minds. They have faith in their teams, even if they don't. It's like it's a free reason to party. So they're going out there and home field advantage is has shown to be bigger than previous seasons, I would say. And I 100% agree with you with the tight end room. I think Jordan Dingle is a special athlete. And the Ole Miss game, he was a fingertip away from that screen pass going 80 yards down the field. I believe it. I think if he catches that ball with open space, even if some people catch him, it's going to be tough to bring him down. So, Bush, let's figure out how we can be multiple on offense. Dan Key needs to be our number one wide receiver, but he can't be the only threat down the field, right? 6, 7, 8, 9 catches a game for him. That's great. But if he can have 4 or 5 and then Jamar can have 3 or 4, then we can have a couple deep shots to bury on. Like, let's figure out how to be multiple, keep the defense guessing.
Go ahead.
And Brock's as he gets more comfortable, especially where he can get through multiple reads, he can get through multiple hitches, and not have to worry about D lineman being in his lap, and the O line gets a little more confidence. So gradually progressing. I like how you put that. I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, let's small percentage better each week, and then peak when we have to be. I think it's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I also think a lot of fans probably don't realize this, but I think just having Bush may not be the flashy coordinator that like a lot of fans would want, because he's not a Liam Cohen. He's not going to be a guy that's going to run like a super flashy, throw the ball down the field type of offense, which is what we saw a little bit with stretches during Liam's first season with Will Levis and everything. But I think the way that Bush wants to run the offense is more of what Stoops is comfortable with. I think he's more conservative, even though he's not like just run the ball 90% of the game. He's a lot more conservative than Liam was. And I think when you've got two football minds that are working together on more like what the way that they envision the offense and the game going, I think that may put us in better situations this year than when last year it seemed like we were kind of going against the grain a little bit. There were times where it was like Liam wanted to do, a more up-tempo. Well, I can't say up-tempo because we were so super slow with our play calling, but he wanted to be a little bit more flashy with the offense. You saw some things that I don't know if Stoops was entirely comfortable with, and I think that maybe have been a little bit of the friction we had last year, because it was kind of like we had two different philosophies battling against each other, where this year I think Bush is more on board with trying to win the possession battle, trying to win the game with flipping the field if we're not in a good position. And I think in the long, grand scheme of things, I think that's going to benefit us in the way that him and Stoops can collaborate together and keep us in a lot of these games.
Yeah, there was no secret. There was some contention there between the OC and the head coach last year. It's kind of like, Kellen Moore when he was the OC for the Cowboys, and big Mike McCarthy out there. It's like Kellen Moore wants to sling it around, and Mike's like, "Hey, let's run the damn ball. Let's just win a game. We don't have to score 40. Let's just win a ball game." So, I mean, I agree. I looked at Bush's offense coming from Boise. I did expect it to be a little more. You put flashy, but I thought we'd have more chunk plays more consistently than we do. I think he's trying to figure out the players. lot of his offense deals with, like tight end motion and pulling and using those dudes as extensions of the O line. That has not worked very well. Hopefully, those individuals can, Josh Gaddis, hopefully he can start playing a little bit better. That fumble recovery in the end zone kind of gets him a little bit of a spark so that he can extend his offense. And he's also doesn't have a Genty on this team, right? I mean, the Boise running back is generational. He's probably going to win the Heisman this year, or he should be putting up Barry Sanders type numbers. So you don't have that player on the team. So he's kind of used it multiple ways. Like Wilcox has been the explosive guy. Sumo has been the more consistent, where you can just give him the ball. He can just eat away at a defense. So let's see how the offense goes. But the defense, you mentioned defense is top 5 in the country. That's definitely not hyperbole. And I think you can make an argument that it's the number 1 defense in the country, at least in the SEC. You look at, they hold Georgia to 13 points. And really, that one field goal they had before halftime, I believe it was, off the fumble recovery from Brock, that put them in a positive field position. If we punt that ball, do they get down the field? I don't know, but that's how it played out. And then we hold Ole Miss to 17. You see Bama put up 30-some on Georgia. Vandy puts up 40 on Bama. I mean, you just look at the numbers and see what we've done and what we've held explosive offenses to. This is the best defensive group in the SEC, and tell me I'm giving the hometown favoritism here. Maybe I am, but just looking at it, it's definitely in the argument for the best in the SEC, potentially best in the country. You agree with that?
Absolutely, and I think we kind of got off to that bad start with the South Carolina game, because I think that kind of changed some people's minds, thinking that people just saw the score and maybe didn't know how some of those points were scored, and they might have thought, well, Kentucky's defense is not what it's being advertised. But like you said, you went over the stats there. I mean, the last few games have proven that Kentucky's defense is definitely top 10, maybe top 5 in the country, and we'll see how the season plays out. But they very well could have one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best. I mean, and it's not like we don't have a good sample size. You've got Georgia and Ole Miss to look back on and see how well this defense played. And you can even throw in, the Ole Miss game, Kentucky was without their best defensive back. I mean, Maxwell Harrison didn't even play in that game and still held them to 17 points. And I talked about this on the post-game show before we even played Ole Miss. I said if we could hold Ole Miss to 21 points or less, that would be an outstanding performance for our defense, even if Kentucky didn't win the game. Kentucky not only won the game, but held Ole Miss to 17 points. And we just saw what Ole Miss did to South Carolina on the road in a great SEC road environment. So, I mean, that Lane Kiffin's Lane Kiffin. He's still going to score points. And for Kentucky to go and do what they did, against Ole Miss it's even more impressive now that we see how Ole Miss responded against South Carolina.
Yeah, and no one was going to question the front seven. Like, our D line is phenomenal. It's got depth and it's got immense talent. But like last year, the question it wasn't a question. We saw the secondary, the back half of the defense struggled. So it was, can the safety and defensive back group match what the D line can do? So can the back half match what the front half can do? And the answer is yes. Like you said, Maxwell is out. Nichols goes out there and makes plays. Ty Bryant's flying around. Childers is doing great from that safety, get a hybrid position. I mean, you got dudes who are just, when you can play free and you're not, a defense isn't playing reactionary. It's all action, right? I see and go, like, boom. I'm the one who's forcing our will on the offense. And it starts up in the trenches. And then you can say, hey, we're going to get to the quarterback. Our run D is great, and if they want to pass, we're going to get to the quarterback. Where he's got 2.5 seconds to get the ball out. All you got to do is stay with your man or be super responsive in your zone and make a play on the ball. And that's happening, right? So Brad White's in his bag right now, and he has the talent to pretty much do whatever he wants. And I like that they're playing aggressive and playing to that talent and playing to the skill set that they have. And if they keep doing that, I've said it 40 times already between this show and everywhere else, that they will keep us in every single game that we're going to play. Keep it to a one possession game and let the offense gradually progress. We're going to be in a good spot. And it's an exciting place to be as a Kentucky fan, and kind of seeing the last few years kind of come together and say, okay, now we, hopefully it's not just hope. It's not like, let's see what happens. We're actively seeing it, and hopefully this is the year that it just kind of comes together, and we can see some legacy type Kentucky football in what's probably close to the end of Stoops' career at Kentucky.
Yeah, and I do like, just to touch back on the defense, I really like you brought up the point about getting to the quarterback, because if you look at last year's season, that was something that we really didn't do consistently. And, one thing that with Brad White's defense, it seems like when we don't get a consistent pass rush, that's when some of these better teams can pick us apart. So I really like that we were getting to Jackson Dart, making him super uncomfortable in that Ole Miss game, because that's a really good offensive line for Ole Miss. I mean, they're pretty damn good. And for us to get a consistent rush, and I mean, JJ Weaver was in his grill most of the game. Deion Walker was clogging up the middle. They weren't really getting any push up front. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like if we can get that consistent pass rush for the rest of the season, we're not really going to see, Georgia probably was the best offensive line we were going to see all year. I don't really see anybody on our schedule that's going to be able to hold us back like Georgia and Ole Miss did. So we saw how those games turned out. We were right in the thick of things and had a chance to beat Georgia, and then did go beat Ole Miss. So I really, I feel good in our pass rush, and I think that is going to be the key to this defense being great. They've already proven that they're a really, really good defense, but if they can get to the quarterback, which has been their Achilles heel in the past, if they can do that, there's no telling how good this defense could be this year.
Yeah, and talking about Deion Walker, when he's playing over center or in like a 3 technique, and they have to double, and then you leave Oxidine or Weaver singled, or you've seen Brad White. Could you imagine being a tackle and seeing Deion Walker lined up on the edge and coming at you? It's like this dude is 300-something pounds and can move. Yeah, moves. Has got incredible feet and hands, and just moves way faster than he should be for being that large. Being able to move him around and kind of keep the defensive line moving around, keeping them fresh because of the depth that we have. Yeah, it's massive, and it's exciting to see them come along and seeing that talent. And I think we have multiple Sunday type players on that defense. And they're going to have to carry this team. I have faith the offense is going to get better, but I don't know if they're going to be able to win games in 28, 35 point type shootouts. We can keep teams to 21 or below, like you mentioned with Ole Miss. Then I think we're walking away with wins in the majority of those games, winning the time possession and winning the turnover battle. But we had a bye week. Have you been able to look into Vandy? Obviously, you watched the Bama game, but have you done some diving into what you think the keys to victory are as they come to Lexington next weekend?
Yeah, I mean, Vandy's a good team, and I think a lot of people will kind of forget that, even though they just beat Alabama. It's still the name across the chest says Vanderbilt, so that's what I really hope that fans will probably start overlooking them. The spread's already come out. Kentucky, I think, opened up as like a 12-point. Was it 14.5? Yeah, I mean that's a lot of points. I mean, for a team that for a team that just beat Alabama, it's like, I hope we don't fall into that trap of thinking this is just your grandfather's Vanderbilt team coming into Kroger Field next weekend. So it's a really good team. They can be explosive on offense. I mean they scored points against a really good Alabama defense, a team that looked like they were going to shut Georgia down completely in the first half whenever Alabama went up against Georgia the other day. So this is a team that can score some points. I don't know how they're going to go. I mean, I think that's going to be a very good angle to watch in this game, is how Vanderbilt's offense goes up against our defense. I think that's going to be the biggest point of the game. I think if Vanderbilt can find a way to score points, I think, I mean, obviously if they can find a way to score points, it's going to be close. But I just, I don't think this is going to be a game where Kentucky blows Vanderbilt out in any sense of the word. I think this is going to be a game that's going to be a nail biter. I think Kentucky's going to have to be creative on offense. They're a defense that's plays similar in a way that they play that like bend but don't break style of defense. Play a lot of zone defense, and they're going to try to keep you in front of them, and they're going to try to hope that you make mistakes and turn the ball over. So if Kentucky can take care of the ball, be efficient on offense, and just not be silly and go, and do stuff that they're not used to doing. I still like Kentucky's chances in this game. I would not take the spread, but I would definitely pick Kentucky to win the game. And it's just a matter of, can they stay disciplined? Can they avoid having the annual Stoops letdown game and keep their mind in it? I think is going to be the biggest factor in this game. If they're ready to play, Stoops has them fired up, I think Kentucky wins this game. But if they come out thinking this is your same old Vanderbilt, that's where I get worried and hope that they're not overlooking this team and looking to some of these bigger names on the schedule coming up.
Yeah, I agree. Two things. I think I hope we already had our letdown game. Hopefully SC was the game we walked into thinking we were just going to move on. We had Georgia coming up next, so we overlooked that. Vandy, the second thing is Vandy beating Bama. You got to believe every Kentucky football player, every Kentucky football coach was watching that game, and it was oh damn, like we better not overlook. We got a whole week of practice of this is a ball club. They just beat the number one team in the country, the number one team in the country who just beat the number two team in the country. So we better get our stuff together, get into practice this week, smack each other around, get ready for this game, and then what has to happen on Saturday is when kickoff happens, Vandy's going to have a lot of confidence. They just beat Bama, right? That you said that is a legacy win for that football program, for the university as a whole. So they're going to have some confidence. We need to come out there and in that first half take that confidence away instantly. Like I would love to see, we get the ball, go down, score, defense shuts them down. All of a sudden it's a 7-10 point game at the end of the first quarter. And by halftime, Vandy's like, yep, we might as well get up back on the bus. Now, I don't know if that'll happen. You see the charts that are out there of the Stoops era post bye games. There are a lot of red losses when it comes to those games. Hopefully that Vandy beating Bama and Kentucky players and coaches watching it are going, okay, yeah, let's not take this. Is like you said, it's not your grandfather's Vandy team. These dudes can come and play. They have talent, SEC talent, just like these other schools do, and we don't take them lightly. But yeah, let's. I agree. 14.5 is a lot. I think it's probably a 7 or 10 point game. If it's going to be a blowout or if it's going to hit that 14.5, it's going to be because that happened is we were ready. We were prepared. In the first half, we came out there and played some good ball. And they come out in the second half knowing they can't compete with this team and with this defense. But man, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to touch on, like you said, with the South Carolina game being the letdown game. That is a good point, and I think that's what makes me a little confident in the rest of this season is because if you look historically with some of our schedules before they started changing everything around with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, as you saw that Kentucky traditionally kind of front-loaded their schedule with a bunch of easy, like cupcake-style games. If you look at, going back for probably 7, 8, 9 years, you look at where we are at this point in the season, and you see a lot of 4-0, 5-0, sometimes even 6-0, where Kentucky seems like they're rolling, but if you look at who they've actually played, a lot of those wins are against Murray State, against Charlotte, against some of these teams that
it was just like Ole Miss, right? Ole Miss was
not really
scoring 70 points a game, and then they play an SEC team, and they it's the first time they got smacked around, and they didn't know how to respond. So continue. But I agree. It's last year we played EKU at the beginning of the season, and that was a struggle, right? So when you play those cupcake games, you can't really get a lot out of them. Like, you just hope that you got to beat them by a bunch of points. But when you struggle against those cupcake games, again, the EKU game, it's like, this team might not be, Leary might not be the guy we thought he would. This team might not be the 10-win team that we thought.
Yeah, and when it takes you half the season to get hit in the mouth, it's hard to recover from that. Where it's like this year, you get hit in the mouth second game of the season. You get a lot of guys that probably were reading their news clippings thinking they were a lot of people talked about this was the greatest team Stoops has ever had on paper and all this stuff. So some of these guys maybe started believing themselves a little too much. They get hit in the mouth with South Carolina right away. Maybe that was kind of the lesson we needed early in the season to keep this letdown game from happening later on in the season.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the other thing that helped us was for like the 1 year, for this, the first year of the last couple, where Kurt Herbstreit didn't, pick Kentucky to be like the darling team of the SEC. He was like our curse. Every team was like, hey, watch out for Devin Leary. He's the guy. Will Levis coming back for a second year. There, watch out for Kentucky. And it was always a letdown. It's like, all right, Kurt, enough. We don't need the college game day curse happening anymore. But we went into this season. Brock wasn't even anywhere close to one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the SEC. They didn't really talk about the defense much. I think our over-under was 6.5 games, so kind of disrespectful. And it looked like they might be right, again, going back to South Carolina. But, hopefully that was the smack that we needed to wake up and, both for the players and the coaching staff of like, hey, if you want this to be a team because there's a lot of internal hype. We were fortunate, some of the Bleed Blue folks to be kind of in with the team over the summer and talk to some of the players, and there was a lot of internal hype. It's like, hey, they can sleep on us, but this is definitely a playoff team. So now that passion, that belief is back in the locker room, that's going to be big. And maybe it was the SC loss that needed to kind of jar everybody back and to kind of just shake them loose and be like, hey, this is not going to be where you can just go to any game and walk over anybody. You better bring your best stuff every single week. And it seems like we have been. Georgia, Ole Miss, we've been bringing our best stuff. And, let's keep bringing that intensity. Let's keep using the talent. Let's keep, that linear progression like you mentioned. And who knows what's going to be happening this season. That Louisville Kentucky game in Lexington could be a massive, massive game when it comes to playoff implications and who's in and who's out.
Yeah, Louisville's going to take some L's too, so that game might not mean as much to them as it does to us at the end of the season because we've got a little bit more margin for error. We could take probably one more loss, and if we win the rest, we're probably still in contention for the playoff, where they're probably already out of it at this point, even if they win majority of their games. So, yeah, I hope that game means something to them because we need that rivalry to come back. I don't want them to win a game, but we at least want to make it interesting because, when the Satterfield era, when we're winning, 52-10 or whatever some of those scores were, I think a lot of those fans are checking out. It's not as fun to beat them when they're not engaged. I want them engaged and beat them like last year. That's the fun part of the rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, the last year's win was definitely. I don't know. I don't know how you felt. I wasn't super confident. I was very nervous, and then we pulled it out. That when Barryon brought that thing back, that kickoff return was it right after halftime, right? The opening kickoff at halftime. I was like, hey, I think we gave us some life. That was massive. And going back when they I forget who had the pick in the end zone to seal the game off. I was actually on a flight heading back from Arizona, trying not to lose my mind watching the game on my phone. People looking at me on the airplane like this dude is outside of his mind. But so I was thinking about this before we close it out. Between the Ole Miss win, which was, a 21-point spread, I think it opened up at, and then, so that was an away game. And then going back to college basketball, Cal takes Kentucky to Auburn. College game days there. They gave us what they number 6 in the country, I think they were at the time. No one gave us any chance to win that game. And then we go in that environment and win that game. Between the two, what do you think was the more impressive victory there?
I definitely think the Ole Miss win. I think, Kentucky, especially when you look at what happened with the South Carolina game, I think a lot of, media, national talking heads kind of closed the coffin on Kentucky after that South Carolina game. They thought we were dead. I mean, everybody just kind of wrote this off as like, well, Kentucky's offense is the worst in the conference. They're never going to score enough points to beat anybody. Their defense is all right, but South Carolina's not a great team, and they came in and whipped them. But yeah, I think we're not dead yet. I think we showed in these last few games, especially that Ole Miss game, that this is a hell of a team, and they're only getting better with a quarterback that has not had a lot of starting experience. He's only going to keep getting more and more experience. He's only going to keep getting better and better and more comfortable with this offense as we go along. So, yeah, if you're looking at, I think in basketball terms, Kentucky, even when they're not a favorite, it'd be like a down, like Alabama team coming to Kentucky and getting a win, against a really good Kentucky team. Even if that happens, it's great, but I don't think it's it's not shocking the world. So Kentucky going on the road to a top 5 Auburn team is an impressive win, but Kentucky, even when they're not top 10, top 25, I mean, you're not shocking too many people in basketball when you go on the road and win. So yeah, Kentucky at Ole Miss was definitely the better win in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. At the time I was nervous watching that Auburn game. It wasn't clicking the team. We had all the talent, but we got that win. We got the win at Ole Miss. My argument would be like you said, basketball is just a different sport. We had the talent. Kentucky is going to bring talent every single time. And if you get a big win, no one's going to be surprised whether it was a quote unquote upset or not. I just think more has to happen on the football field. 11 dudes in sync on the offensive side of the ball, 11 dudes in sync on the defensive side of the ball. So I think more has to come together to get a big win like that, especially believing when you're a 3-touchdown underdog. One player on a basketball team can get hot, and we saw that against that Auburn team. We saw it multiple times, like LSU when Dilly just went absolutely insane. But more has to come together. I don't want to say more of a team sport, but just there's more has to play out, and there's more preparation, I think, and more things. The stars have to line more on a football field to get a big win like that. So I would agree. I think that was the bigger win, in program history. If you look over the last year of basketball and this football season. But man, I appreciate you. I really do appreciate you coming on. It was great talking ball with you. I like watching the clips that you put out there on X, and I actually it was the one year talking about the playoff that I saw, and I was like, man, I'll hit this guy up and see if he'd come on the podcast and give his take on this football team. So I do appreciate you coming on, man. Can you tell everybody where they can find your podcast?
Yeah, so I'm on anywhere you listen to podcasts. So you can find me on iTunes, iHeart, Apple, all the big carriers. And then I saw, Facebook, I post all my podcasts on there. So yeah, you can find me on pretty much any social media, and it's Barrel State Podcast. And yeah, we enjoy, reaching as many people as possible. So feel free to chime in with comments and stuff. We love to engage with all the Kentucky fans across the state.
Awesome, man. Also, so we got Bleed Blues got the 102.7, the game pregame. You all have a postgame on ESPN as well. Could tell them where they could get that. Listen to you and TJ talk on postgame football.
Yeah, so it's ESPN Radio in Louisville. It's 6:80 a.m. I believe you could find it on like your radio apps, like iHeart and all that. So you should be able to pull it up on there, 6:80 a.m. ESPN Radio. And they do put out the podcast version of that after every game. So yeah, feel free to check that out too if you'd like to if you'd like to listen to that afterwards, it is a call-in show, so feel free to call in. We've had some shows now where we've had a ton of callers, and then some where it's like I think everybody went to bed. So man, we love to talk to all the fans. And being in Louisville, it's a weird dynamic because half the city's blue, half the city's red. And we get a little bit of mix of everything. We get some haters calling in, and we get some Kentucky fans as well. So it's a nice dynamic. We like it.
Cool, man. Well, I'm out here on the West Coast, Cali time, so I'll jump on there and give you all a call after the Vandy game, and it'll be a happy call, awesome. Or it'll be a like man, we had another letdown game, but definitely I'll jump on there and talk to you and TJ. But again, I appreciate you coming on. Everybody, appreciate you listening to another episode of the All UK Ball podcast. I'm Bleed Blue Randow. You can find me on X at All UK Ball. And as always, bleed blue and go Cats.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Bleed Blue Network podcast. We hope you enjoyed diving deep into the world of Kentucky sports with us. Don't forget to stay connected by following us on Twitter at BleedBNation. Your feedback means the world to us. So take a moment to leave a review. Not only does it help us improve, but it also helps others discover the show. Until next time, keep cheering, keep listening, and keep bleeding blue.